and welcome to Horseplayer Happy Hour. Not just any Horseplayer Happy Hour, it's the Horseplayer Happy Hour Playoffs. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you from the Brooklyn bunker. Once again, wearing the Degenerate Horseplayer t-shirt. What could be better? We've got the little light box going. One thing that's annoying is, in my light, this is clearly purple, which is, great for the whole Breeders' Cup theme of the show. But for some reason, when it goes through the camera and goes out to you guys there in the world, it looks like it's baby blue, and it kind of loses the effect.
Yeah, it has a bluish hue to it.
Exactly. I don't know what's going on. That voice you hear, I'm sure you recognize. And we're going to be doing this show as a podcast, too. We don't always do this with the Horseplayer Happy Hours, but this week, when we've got so much special content and so much looking forward to do to not only a Saturday of Win and You're In Breeders' Cup action, but also a Friday, we're going to get that out there on the In the Money feed as well. So hello to those people who don't always get to hear what we're doing over here at Horseplayer Happy Hour, but it's always me, and it's this guy. You know him from his eponymous podcast, from the work he does on NBC TV's Matt Bernier. What's up, my man?
Exciting times, Pete. The Happy Hour playoffs have kicked off. This is deep stretch going into the Breeders' Cup. If you haven't done your homework or started it yet, now is the time to do so. And like you say, we've got all these big prep races this weekend. Just the tip of the iceberg. I'm looking forward to diving into everything.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got two leaderboards to look at, and we'll start here with just the news that, now it's not official yet, but we did pretty well, people, showing up in this qualifier today. Normally, we play these $20 games. That's how we've populated our playoffs throughout the course of the season. Those are going on in the background as well. As far as the playoffs go, we start with 90 players. That's going to winnow down to a top 40 who will compete next week. Scores reset. Those 40 next week become 20. Those 20 in the next show are going to become 10. Once again, scores resetting the whole time. And then in just a few weeks' time, we're going to have a final table of 10-runner contest with the top finisher winning a Breeders' Cup betting challenge seat. But the thing I'm also excited about, and maybe we'll get to do again next week, keep your eyes peeled, is to have a qualifier going on at the same time. The qualifier, obviously, will send another player to the Breeders' Cup betting challenge. That's awesome. But even more awesome than that, our friends at horseplayers.com, our friends at the Breeders' Cup, are still donating the house cut to our aftercare charities, the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance and the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. So how cool is that, Matt?
Yeah, and like you say, we had a pretty good turnout here this week, 121 entries total. So 2 full BC seats up for grabs. And like you say, all the juice goes off to charity, and hopefully we can do it again in the weeks to come.
It's very, very exciting stuff. Very happy to see how folks have come out and supported us. Let's do a very quick leaderboard check, AJ, if you could pull that up quickly. If not, we can pivot to our special guest and maybe do the leaderboard check directly after the next race at Belmont. I'll let you make the call, AJ. If our guest appears, that'll be the way that we go. And if a leaderboard appears, which it just did, that'll be the way that we go. All right, so we've got 2 leaderboards this week, and we're starting off with the is this the playoffs, or is this the
No, this is this week's contest, the individual week.
There we go. And we've got some big scores up there on the board with Joseph Paese. I'm going to say it as if it's an Italian name. I'm not sure if it is. And Wayne Tam up there tied at 114 in the top spot. Bob Montgomery, 79. Braden Selvig, 74.10. Mike Webb, 73.40. Julie LeBoyko, 65.20. Gary Fenton, Little Red Feather Racing right there at 62.70. The Undertaker, Stephen Thompson in 8th at 59.80 right now. And, this is very different. This is, 1 in 65 get the prize, essentially. There'll be some, it does look like they've upgraded to do 2 full BC entries, which is just fantastic. I'm so happy to see that up there on the leaderboard as well. And then in our other contest, we have 90 runners going to post, and you finish 40th, you finish first. It's the same thing. Very different in terms of strategy. That's something we'll talk about with our first guest, who I noticed took an interesting strategic approach. AJ, if you want to hop over to that other leaderboard, it should also be noted on there on the drop down as Horseplayer Happy Hour Playoffs or something like that. Yeah, it's the second one there. Click on that sucker, and we'll have it, and we'll see who turns up there. Now, again, Wendy Long in the lead, 77.70. But the number that really matters here is actually if we scroll all the way down to 40th place. So why don't we do that? I won't shout everybody out, but we'll give you a sense of where the cut line is right now with 3 races to go. I need just a little bit more play on that screen. And there we have it. Michael Domable with 15. So all to play for, you could be last and have all to play for at this stage with the cut line only being 15. We'll talk about the whys and wherefores of and how different it is with these cut lines in mythical tournaments and all those specifics. We'll do that a little bit later because right now I do want to bring in a special guest. We're giving out Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats throughout the course of this Horseplayer Happy Hour Tour season. And a few of them have already been won. The name we just said, Michael Domable, he won a feeder. Won one of our feeders the other week and went on to qualification play on one of the Saturday $179 contests, punched his ticket. There are others who've done that as well. But then through our tour, our interconnected series of 20-ish contests during the year, it was a little bit of a runaway for the man we're about to bring in right now. And you can pop him up there anytime. There he is, David Browning, coming to us from Lexington, Kentucky. First and foremost, congratulations, my friend. You went basically wire to wire in this spot.
Thank you. Thank you both for having this and everyone behind the scenes that gives us this chance to do it.
Well, I'm glad you thank them too, because it's really true. Supporting organizations like horseplayers.com and the Breeders' Cup who are doing these player-friendly initiatives, when we support them, we're saying, hey, we're paying attention. We want you to do more things that are player friendly and support important initiatives like Thoroughbred Aftercare. So let's hear your emotional journey, David. You started off, you basically never let up, but was there a point at which you ever felt confident in this thing?
Throughout the summer, I felt pretty confident, but then towards the end, Michael, started playing the same horses on the same tickets and started gaining points on 2 or 3 entries at once. So it was getting scary at the end.
How did it feel to have the overall honor of winning this tour and punch your ticket to the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge in a field that included so many contest luminaries you competed against before?
No, it was just a great feeling to be able to get to 10,000 for putting up, $20 each week. Is just an opportunity that most of us don't have.
And hopefully you had a little bit of fun along the way as well as the little stresses here.
Yeah, it gives us something to look forward to every week all through the summer and the spring.
Wow.
David, I got a quick question for you from a handicapping standpoint. Do you approach the contest any differently than you would on a day-to-day or a weekend-to-weekend kind of basis?
Probably play a little bit more prices than I would. A lot of times in regular betting, you might single a favorite or something, but in the contest, you really can't go that way. I did play one entry each week, kind of 3 to 4 to 5 to 1 shots, because when you're playing one track, you just about picking the winners. You can't go hunting for prices elsewhere. So I did have a couple top 5 finishes, just picking 3, 4 to 5 to 1 shots.
Speaking of strategy, how does it change for you in this tournament you're competing in today, where you have multiple entries, 90 entries total, and the prize for 40th is the same as the prize for first? How did you approach that?
3 tickets, and basically they're all pretty much different. So you just maybe get one in the top 40 and move on.
And from a philosophical standpoint, when you go through a race, are you someone who is purely a pace player? Are you someone who's just a fig player? What is your kind of MO from a handicapping standpoint?
Kind of just picture the race in my head. I don't use any of the computer programs. I'm still pencil and paper type person. And I typically lean more to what I call pressers that sits right behind the speed, because, speed collapses, they can take over, but they're not so far back, they get in trouble. So today I picked one of my entries kind of prices. One's just kind of favorites and one's in between.
How are they doing so far? Where are you on that leaderboard?
22nd, tied for 43rd, and probably last.
So. Even is last the long shots ticket though? On that you probably only need to be right once, right?
Yeah, it's got like $8 on it, so it's not dead last. But 15 right now is the cutoff, so everybody's still in play.
We've got 3 minutes to race 6 at Belmont. We're going to get your thoughts on this one, David, and then we'll let you get about your handicapping. Huge weekend coming up. Plenty of prep work to be doing for the Breeders' Cup. But which runners? I get. It sounds like you use 3 different runners in here.
One of my tickets, I have the 5 on both of them, then the 8 on the other.
Okay. So 2 5s and an 8. This 5, 11 to 1 right now. What'd you like about this horse?
I like the trainer a little bit, and I think the mare was out of Meadow Lake. I always like Meadow Lake runners. sprinting coming out. Then Pletcher's on the outside. I think it's the Pletcher horse. He just kind of stay out of trouble and get a good spot in the race.
That idea of race design you were talking about before coming into play. This number 5 for Jonathan Thomas, it was good with first-time starters. Print Track, and yeah, the Meadow Lake Dam. Meadow Lake, definitely a good precocity influence, and be interesting to see how this one makes out. And then that 8 horse on the outside, Verratti, another first-time starter, being by Into Mischief. You know, you don't have to twist my arm to use Into Mischief first-time starters. It feels like they can all run. David, we're going to let you get on with it. We'll wish you Godspeed both today and in your future efforts. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to check in with you again very soon.
All right. Thank both of you.
Cheers, David. Good stuff. Matt, how about you when it comes to this 6th race with 1 minute to post now at Belmont Park? Where did your eye go?
That one right on the screen right there, the number 1. I thought Mo Donegal was at least interesting, specifically because of the gate drill two back at Saratoga. According to the DRF Clocker report, showed a little bit of gas from the gate. And I know Jonathan Kinchin's always brought up that, you know, when you see these workout reports, especially with first-time starters, being alert from the gate is very important, because last thing you want to do is have to be spotting a field 2 or 3 lengths first time out of the box. So down on the inside, I'm hopeful Javier can be aggressive, break alertly, and maybe play a little game of come and catch me if you can. But by no means is it a super strong opinion. 6-1, though, I think is fair.
I would agree at the prices. I was going to talk about Triple Elvis, the 3, but I think 4-5 is short enough on this runner. Didn't really do much running on debut, but I was going to excuse it based on the break and the fact that we've seen the form of that race working out pretty well. Two winners have come out of it. This is definitely a weaker group. This is definitely some later season 2-year-old pedigrees. There's a lot of these who probably ultimately are going to want longer, and we're only going the 6.5. But Mo Donegal, you mentioned about that bullet work and the opportunity to maybe be speed from the gate. There's a lot of people out there, sort of an old handicapping saw that the numbers don't really back up about first-time starters from the rail not being good bets. And what I'll say about that is, if they've got speed, if we've got reason to believe they're going to break, I don't think the rail makes really any difference. You know, I'll back those horses with confidence. And for me here with 7-1 on Mo Donegal, that's just far more appealing. I mean, what did you make of Triple Elvis? If Triple Elvis was a decent price, would you be on, or are you more fundamentally against?
No, not at all. I mean, this is a horse that took some money in the debut, and you brought up the fact that the form has held up. We've got a graded stakes winner coming out of that race who won their Major General. But really, just to boil down to the price, I mean, if you look at it comparatively, although this is the one in here with the experience, or one of a couple in here with experience, I just don't know that I can see or justify a 55 or 60% chance based on the way the public is betting. It just seems way overzealous, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's some negative signal about some of the firsters as far as that goes. Certainly, I think this is negative signal about the stablemate. I mean, these horses work together. So the fact that, I mean, who knows? Maybe now I did this before to a Chad Brown firster that was cold on the board and then went and won. That happened in an earlier episode of Horseplayer Happy Hour. So maybe if you backed Green Jacket, you should be very excited with the tote reading that I'm about to do and say, I just find it very strange that Triple Elvis could be 4-5 coming out of a common work with that first-time starter who looked to make sense on paper, and have this one be 7-1. I'm just going to take a look and say Curlin, Malibu Moon. The whole world seems to think, you know, all the insiders anyway, seem to think that Green Jacket needs longer. Would you look at it that way, or would you say, hey, worked heads up with the other one, maybe this is the value?
Well, the only thing that I can think of is that, to your point, these are sort of later developing fall 2-year-olds that perhaps part of the reason some of these horses are the prices that they are, because people think they're going to want more distance as opposed to the 6.5 first out of the box. And maybe a horse like Triple Elvis, who I'm not saying he's not bred to run long, but at the same time, with the experience edge, and perhaps this is more of his game compared to some of the others, maybe that's part of the reason. I'm a little surprised the Pletcher on the outside is only 7-2. I thought that horse would take a fair amount of money. But having said that, I do think based on the prices available, I think Mo Donegal is definitely the play for me. And I agree with everything you laid out about the rail with a first-time starter. If you've got a horse that can break alertly, in a way, I would almost rather be on the inside. It's just if you don't think you're going to get that position out on the front or forward, that becomes a bit of an issue when you've got horses kind of crossing over in front of you.
we're going to be doing things a little differently. These shows are typically very interactive, and if we have time, we will do that. So if you do have questions, hit us up. We're going to try to find time, but between the guests and all the winning you're in action this weekend, there's not going to be as much of that as usual. It also goes to it being a podcast as well. And there we talked about the importance of the break from O'Donegal, and we didn't really break, though David Browning's horse, I'm going to say this correctly this time, Print Track, did break very nicely, as did the other one he mentioned, Varati, who I agree, a little bit cold on the board. And you see one like this cold on the board with the dam side pedigree. I was thinking maybe that was an indication that he was going to need longer, but he's coming into the race nicely, and the favorite isn't in a bad spot either. It feels like this race is down to 3 here as they're about to turn in. Yeah,
I can't imagine anybody else factoring in here. Chad's horse has every opportunity if good enough. You brought up that the Thomas horse broke like a shot, went right to the front. Chad's tipped out right now. I would think that the horse is going to go right on by, but depends what we get from Todd's first-time starter.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here as the real running begins. And Varati, under a lot of pressure, Triple Elvis swung up in the bridle on his own courage, being asked for everything now, throwing everything but the kitchen sink at Triple Elvis. And looks like he might be hanging on the money a little bit as Varati is finding more in deep stretch after looking like he was in trouble. And this one is going to get one of David's tickets in a very nice position. It's going to come 8 and 3 with a big closing flourish.
This is what I'm always looking for with the 2-year-olds. We're going to see the head on hopefully momentarily. Look at the one galloping out. I feel like based on the slow break on that left lead for quite a while, nobody was making up any ground in this race. I would just suggest throw the horse in your stable mail. Yep. And when they come back, you need to assess who else is in the race. It's not just a blind bet back. But I thought that was those are the things that I'm more interested in seeing. Look how far back that horse is right now with 1/8 of a mile to go. And for him to gallop up the ground that he does, look, not trying to take anything away from the other Todd who ended up winning the race, but I think maybe you want to keep an eye on a horse like that. Look for those moves that the form the form is going to say third be in 4 lengths, 5 lengths. Well, maybe a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah, this horse ran very well, all things considered. Here's the break again. Hops, did a little hop step, climbed, ugly looking start. This is a horse I would think is going to need more ground. Looking at that pedigree, Uncle Mo, Pulpit Dam, and is going to win going longer very, very soon in one of the next 2 starts. Quite possibly bet down quite a bit from the 9-1 of today. But I think that was a nice pick by you and a horse to watch going forward. Triple Elvis has a bit of a money burning look at the moment.
Yeah.
And Varati did what needed to be done. And sometimes with a runner like Varati, where you see the potential for a distance pedigree, you see the little bit of cold on the board, you see some professionalism, especially compared to Triple Elvis, and you say maybe that's a horse that can improve again the next start again, especially if they decide to put a little more distance in the works. So we'll have to see how the figure comes back and all that. I mean, it's possible. It's just not going to be a race that we're going to want to bet a lot of horses out of, but I do think there's nice things to say about the 1st and 3rd place finishers there. Shall we look ahead to this weekend, Matt, at some win and you're in action? Because goodness knows we have a whole lot of it, starting with these Friday races, which are not going to be covered anywhere else on the In the Money Network, I don't believe. So all the more reason why we should talk about them. Actually, I think that's a bit of a lie. I think Sean Tugel and I are going to talk about them because they're 2-year-old races. So there will be a baby talk that will also be popping up there. But this will be a chance to get your thoughts and to give at least a high-level view. And if folks don't realize, this Friday, it's a Friday, but this is a card you got to pay attention to. This is better than many weekend cards you're going to find with these 3 win and you're in races for the 2-year-olds, graded stakes action with the Chandelier and the American Pharoah, and then an interesting little race with the Speakeasy. Let's start there with race number 5 at Santa Anita tomorrow night. Matt, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, knowing that we have a million things to go over, I'm going to kind of break it down based on the way, give you horses that I think are going to be reasonable prices or what I think they should be anyway. So playable, put it this way.
That.
I've got 4 horses, the 2 one-timer, the 4 Forbidden Kingdom, the 5 Miss Alacrity, and the 7 Time to Party. One timer I chatted about him on my show way back in August, saying that I wanted them to run him in the Hopeful because I thought based on the pedigree, he wants to go longer. I think even though he's by Trap Shot, there is certainly dirt pedigree on the bottom side. Sir Winston is in the family. So I think added ground is going to be to his benefit, but it sounds like this is what the plan was all along for them. I made him 3-1. Forbidden Kingdom, I guess they flirted with the idea of running in the American Pharoah, instead stayed here in this spot as a bit of a nice little stepping stone. I made him 9-2. I thought that debut was fine. I thought he was shortening a little bit late, so this 5 furlong distance should be right between his ears. And then Miss Alacrity, I made her 3-1. I thought she ran really well in the Colleen. Wouldn't be surprised if she came back for Ward and ran big in this spot. And Time to Party, I thought it was a relatively easy lead in the grand scheme of things, but I thought anytime you get Peter Miller with a turf sprinter, especially with the younger ones, I think you need to take note. I made this one 7-2 as well. I suppose if I needed to make a pick, I'd stick with one timer, but I think one of those 4. I'd be surprised if it was somebody else.
I was nervous about one timer for the turf. And synth and turf are similar enough that maybe I'm overthinking it, but just like looking through the damn side pedigree, looking at the Trap Shot prodigy, and I think the one timer is going to just take a ton of cash on these figures earned on a different surface out of town. Ravelli hasn't, he's only had like 3 starters at Santa Anita, so I'm not going to draw any conclusions, but I do like to see, it's always nice to see a trainer who has had success on the circuit. So I leaned against. I went with Forbidden Kingdom, but I don't think we're going to get your desired price. I'm concerned on the way they're going to bet that this horse could be a bit shorter than that. The pace figure that we saw on debut for Forbidden Kingdom, I think would put him on the lead here. And my gut was just that the horse was going to be better on turf. We know how good American Pharoah is. It does look to me like he's going to be better on turf than on dirt. The Dam dropped the turf winner using that GSR metric from our friends at Equine Edge. He actually improves 5 points on his GSR going to the turf. And then the form of that race is pretty good. Kamui came back and won the maiden next time by 6. So it's I was going to, taking a selection-oriented approach, I was going to go there, but I totally respect and agree if you want to make money in the long term, what you're doing, trying to price this up and then bet the ones that are going to be bigger than they should be, that's the way to go. If you had to guess which one of yours was going to offer value, now I know in real world, you're not going to have to do this. You'll be able to see the board. But if you were to guess, where do you think the value will lie based on that line that you made?
Probably the outside horse, Time to Party. I made that one 7-2. I just feel like with the figs that this one has earned compared to some of the other runners in here, maybe gets overlooked a little bit, not a ton, but enough that you're close to that 4-1 morning line. And I think that would at least be relatively fair. Again, I think 7-2 is kind of a good number on this one. Miss Alacrity, I just think the Ward piece is going to be just enough to depress the price too much. I think she may vie for favoritism. Whether she deserves to or not is another story. And you bring up one timer. I take all of your points, and I think they're all valid. I think this is, with lower profile outfits, and I say that knowing that Larry Ravelli is not a low profile outfit, but in Southern California he is. This is not a normal move. I do understand the logic of saying I want to prove it to me that you can do it on turf against better horses, because if we're calling a spade, that Victoria was not a particularly good group of horses that he beat. So I wouldn't fault anybody for approaching him sort of at arm's length, but I've been really taken by the 2 performances, and I want to see if he can do it again here. And if he does take a ton of money, then yeah, he's probably a fade. But if he can get something in that, I made him 3. I think that would be a reasonable price. If you could get that, I'd bet him.
Looking at the way the pace shakes out in here, I wonder if Forbidden Kingdom won't be held up for like a stalk and pounce type of a trip, and maybe going a little bit slower early will increase this one's late kick. That's what the trip that I want to see. There's obviously, being a 5 furlong turf sprint, surprise, surprise, there does appear that there's plenty of speed in the race. One other question I had about Time to Party, and we're probably talking about this race too long, but I just find it interesting, is I think the tactics on this one are going to be interesting, because you got the outside draw is great for this horse, I think, because that thing we've talked about many times, you have that opportunity to see what the riders to the inside are doing before Pratt has to commit. You've got Pratt in the irons. That's going to give you confidence that whatever the right decision is, it's going to be made. But this is a horse that's won wire to wire twice. in a race where you got 4 horses with faster pace figures. So I wonder about the situation for him, but that's probably counterbalanced by the good draw and the pilot. So I think it's a fascinating race. It'll be very interesting to see what happens. I'm going to stick with Forbidden Kingdom, and we'll see how it plays out on the tote board in the first of our 3 2-year-old races. And the second is the very next race number 6 at Santa Anita, 6:30 Eastern, mile and a 16th for the 2-year-old fillies. We got the Chandelier this time up, and it's another race where I think there's a bunch of horses you can make cases for. Ultimately, I decided, not unlike the last time we saw Grace Adler on the racetrack, and she was a nice winner for Baby Talk. I think was the only place I talked about that race. But got a great setup there. I think she's going to get a great setup in this spot. And the other thing I really like about Grace Adler is that it's not like that was some suck up, clunk up, did all the running in the lane when the race was over kind of run. She moved into the fast part of that race and got into contention and then finished her race. Blew them away, really. Good looking work since. I'm not sure that they can beat her.
That's interesting because I made her one of 4 in here. So I guess let me just call them what I would consider contenders. The 1 Electric Ride, the 2 Ain't Easy, the 4 Grace Adler, the 5 Desert Dawn. My concern with Grace Adler visually, did it actually live up to the fig or vice versa? Basically, she had everything go her way in that spot. The pace was wicked. She rolled into it. She drew off one for fun. I wonder if she's facing better horses this time around. We have to go out to 2 turns. And I just think she's going to be way over bet on the heels of a nearly 12-length victory with Baffer and that big, those couple of workouts in her back pocket.
Yep.
I made her 4-1. I think she can win this race, certainly. I just think she's going to be a pretty severe underlay, in my opinion. The inside 2 runners, I think, are the 2 most likely. I think Ain't Easy is probably the most likely winner, in my opinion. I made them both sort of 3-1 chances. I really thought it was an educational debut, one of a few in here for D'Amato. Full of run, ears pricked at the very end, in behind horses. I thought that's always something I like to see. And I know it's a big jump from 5.5 to a mile and a 16th, but based on the pedigree, I don't think that's going to be much of an issue. She's a sibling to Cupid, who we know what he was capable of. He won the Hollywood Gold Cup, I believe, at a 1.25 miles. So the distance, I don't think is going to be an issue for this one. I like that you've seen that this one can sit and finish as opposed to being a need the lead type. Electric Ride, I have no issue. I thought the fig was legit. The pace was a little bit on the more moderate side. I think things are going to be a little bit hotter this time around, and perhaps that works to her disadvantage. And the other one that I threw out there that from a betting standpoint, I think I'll get the price on Desert Dawn. I made her 6-1. I just, she's another one. The pace for the most part kind of worked out for her, the setup of everything and that maiden score. But I thought she was impossibly wide throughout. For her to run the way that she did and carry the amount of ground that she did, I think there may be something else here. Maybe this isn't the race for her, but down the road, that to me suggests that she's the kind of horse that she can overcome some adversity. She doesn't need to have everything gift wrapped for her, considering she ran basically 1 1/8 in a mile race breaking her maiden. So she may be the one that if I ended up making a bet in here, because I think I'll get the 6-1, maybe it would be Desert Dawn, but I think Ain't Easy is the most likely winner.
It's interesting. Ain't Easy. I'm just scared. I take your point about the passing horses and the pedigree. I'm just a little bit scared about, 5.5 to 1 1/16 is tricky. And I'm just worried about her getting a little bit lit up. I think the Desert Dawn case is very, very interesting. Having 2-turn form in a race with so much stretch out speed, that ain't easy, and I think, on the morning line, she's completely overlooked at 15-1. So I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but it certainly is. It certainly is notable and interesting. You're certainly that suggests you're certainly going to get your 6-1. Let me take a quick look at that Equinedge morning line tool that we've talked about that does a pretty good job also predicting how the crowd is going to bet, and see if we can get just another little data point on that one if I can find it quickly enough. But yeah, if you're just taking a guess as to what price she's going to be, 6-1's the value. What do you think the crowd's going to make her?
I could see her being in that sort of 11-1, 12-1 kind of range. I haven't seen the sheets or Thorograph, but I have to assume they like her, or she's at least fits in here with some of the other girls based on the ground loss. I could see somewhere between 10 and 12.
Yeah, they have her very. I mean, she's not going to be 20-1. That's what the Equine Edge line has her at. But that's just interesting with that at 20 and the morning line at 15. Definitely a horse that I'm going to figure out a way to get in my reckoning, because I could see a race set up too where all the stretch out speed bangs each other up, and a runner like Grace Adler with that kind of finish, and a runner like the 5 can end up getting involved here and maybe being nice little exacta partners for us in this one at Santa Anita. Let's move on to the boys division, the American Pharoah. We referred to it a little bit before. This one will go as race number 8, and we move up to the grade 1 ranks. We've got a field of 7, and just to tip my hand, my opinion is very boring in this one. I'm hoping you have something more interesting.
I assume that means that you're down on the inside with the Big Fig and Corniche.
I'm too much of a figure monkey to ignore the 98 Beyer speed figure. And, looking at some other figures around, that could be light. And I like the fact that there's 2 fast 5 furlong works since. And then you look at the blood, Quality Road, Distance Female Family. This one's supposed to be better going longer. Then you say, oh, but what about the pace setup? And the other speed is the same trainer. So whatever there'll be some type of team tactics. There ain't going to be a duel. So I don't know. It all led me to think that Corniche is going to be odds on and win.
So the horses that I identified as contenders: Corniche, Flying Drummer, Oviatt Class, Rockefeller. I mean, Corniche, purely from a fig standpoint, if the horse runs back to that, and again, you do have to deal with the giant stretch in distance from 5.5 to a mile and 1/16th. If the horse runs back to the fig, he's going to win. I guess I made him 2-1. You're not going to get 2-1. He's going to be closer to even money, I would think, maybe even 4-5 odds on. I don't know. I mean, I looked at this race and I didn't think it was just as easy as he's just better than everyone else. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I thought Oviatt Class ran really well. Not just because of the connections, but when I watched the tape, and I have it written in my trip note, whiffs of Texas Red. The kind of horse that if you give him pace like you had in that maiden score, I think he's going to run all day. I think he might be halfway decent in the grand scheme of things. Rockefeller, I don't never change leads at any point. And yes, he was bet down to be the favorite in that spot, but I just wasn't overly impressed by the maiden score. It didn't really knock my socks off. The horse that I want to bet him, and I think I'm going to get the price, is Flying Drummer. And he doesn't look all that sexy on paper. He's still a maiden. But that run most recently, Oviatt Class was the one who defeated him that day. The pace that they set going 2 turns was unbelievable. He got hooked with some big long shot in there, tucked him away, put him to bed. The 6th place finisher was the next out winner of the 55 Beyer. The fact that Flying Drummer didn't pack it in entirely makes me think that there's something here. They paid almost $1 million for him. And pairing up those 73s in his first 2 starts, I think he's going to improve. Is it enough to beat Corniche? Probably not. But I made him a 9-2 chance. And I think there's a scenario in which I'll be very curious to see. Is this similar to the Arrowgate Travers, where Bejarano, who was aboard American Freedom, kind of gives Corniche a little bit of room down on the inside to let him go? Because if they don't do that, based on figs from a pace standpoint, I don't think Corniche is fast enough to outfoot Flying Drummer. And I think the last thing they want to do is get him stuck in behind horses. So I'll be very curious to see what the instructions are with the 2 Baffert horses on the inside. I think there's more there than meets the eye with Flying Drummer. That's all I'm saying.
I can see what you're saying. There's one has come back to run out of that race and won. So the form of the Flying Drummer Oviatt Class race is good. And you never know. I mean, these are 2-year-olds, so they could have a plan to do one thing or another. And what you're suggesting isn't necessarily a bad plan. Where the 2 breaks and sort of goes wide and lets Corniche do his thing down at the inside, and then they just run their race. But it's also possible these 2-year-olds can get lit up. And if that happens, the one I agree with you that the interesting one becomes Oviatt Class, because that was a pretty solid race. And I know you don't use the name of Texas Red lightly, especially in a show sponsored by the Breeders' Cup. He was part of your big deep run at the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge a minute or 2 ago. But in within the life of an extended version of this show, we'll call it that. But I take your point, and I mean it's almost the one you don't hear as much about. It's almost the old lone closer angle. I mean, I guess fans of Phineas may chafe when I say that, because you could make the case that that he's got the ability to potentially close and come into this. But I don't really like closing sprinters stretching out. A horse like Oviac Class, who's already shown the ability to win at 2 turns. I mean, that's one I'd like to keep on side. I think I'll have some 1-4 and some 4-1 on tickets as well.
The other horse in here who I don't have him necessarily classified as a contender, and I've tried to group contenders basically 6-1 and less as being a contender. Anybody above that, I think you're kind of underneath types. Papa Cap is kind of sneaky to me because that Del Mar Futurity, it's a disaster of a trip. He nearly unseated Bravo at the start of the race. The way that he was shuffled in behind horses, for him to, I don't want to say run the way that he did, but I think there's a lot more there than maybe meets the eye. I'm not suggesting he's going to win this race, but you see the pedigree. You would think going out to 2 turns is going to be in his wheelhouse. Maybe he's one that you can kind of play around with a little bit underneath. And I think you base it off of the best pal, not the Futurity as sort of your running line if you're trying to project what he could be.
It's an interesting race. It really is. I'll be curious to see if Corniche can live up to the hype that I and many others have put on him. Going to be fascinating. 3 excellent 2-year-old races. Great stuff for your Friday night happy hour. Make sure to have it on and check it out. And we're going to get plenty of clues for the Breeders' Cup. Clues that will continue as we move on to racing on Saturday. We're going to go back to Santa Anita eventually for 3 more win in your ends. We're going to start off at Belmont. But before we do that, I wanted to just throw in, you mentioned that idea of considering contenders horses that you're pricing up under 6-1. I think the first time I ever read about that concept and using that as a cutoff was in a book by Mark Cramer called Value Handicapping. And we're actually going to have Mark Cramer with us a little bit later in the show to go over. We're not doing all the French win in your in stuff on this show, but we will get his thought on the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe coming up in Paris on Sunday. And we will have a separate segment on the regular In the Money Players podcast late week show with our international panel of Alex Sauceville and Naomi Tucker and Michael Adelson going over all of the Group 1 action in France. So we've got you covered there too. But now we're going to cover you at Belmont and what I'm going to describe as a very interesting running of the Champagne Stakes. I've been a Whit fan for so long. He's got to do better when it comes to getting out of the break. Eventually, I thought there were too many with big upside. I went another direction for my top pick, but I'll give my thoughts in a minute. Let's get yours. Who wins the Champagne?
Look, I have the entire field as a playable price outside of Cavid or Cavode, however you'd like to say that one. I made Whit 4-1. I made my Prankster 7-2, Jack Christopher 7-2, Gunite 9-2, and Command Performance 5-1. Now, based on a conversation we had a few weeks ago, right after Saratoga wrapped up, I'd mentioned the horse on my show earlier that week, and some folks were making comments during one of the happy hours about Command Performance. I said he was the 2-year-old that I was most interested in down the road. And I said, on my show anyway, I at least speculated on the idea that if I were involved with the horse, I would take a shot in the Champagne. What do you have to lose? I think the upside is there. If it doesn't work, you regroup, you break your maiden, whether it's at Belmont or you go down to Gulfstream and you get him ready to be a legitimate 3-year-old prospect. For them to show up here, knowing that it's another Todd and it's the same ownership group as Whit, I think speaks volumes to what they actually think of him. Now, if for some reason he gets withdrawn from the race, do with that what you will in time. But I assume he's here to run, and I have to kind of give him a look. I just know he's going to be the right price. He's 10-1 on the line. I made him 5. He's probably going to go off closer to that 10 than 5, I would think. And I do wonder, with the amount of speed in this race, boy, doesn't this thing feel like it could come apart with Jack Christopher and my Prankster and Gunite all kind of just going hammer and tong early?
I mean, you're making a good case. Command Performance definitely is supposed to be better going longer, is definitely supposed to improve second out. I think this is a salty group. And so I did not end up listing him, but this is a horse at 10-1 or higher. I think that you're making some very good points about potentially including, and I think you're going to get all of that. Now, did you hear anything about him potentially scratching? Was there any scuttlebutt on that?
No.
Or were you just
I need to make that clear that it's not like I read that anywhere. But when I when I saw him in there along with the other horse that this entire outfit has, and I saw Tyler named, which is not a bad thing, but I don't immediately think of Gaffaleone as being a Pletcher sort of first call or second call for a graded stake type. It just made me wonder a little bit, but at the same time, it's not like the race wasn't going to go. I mean, they had it's a grade one. They had 5 horses, and that's that. But I'm hopeful that this is an indication of what they actually think of this one, because I was really taken by the debut. I encourage anybody to go back and watch the tape if you haven't seen it. I think there's something here. I think he can run, and for them to bring him to this spot as a maiden, I'm hopeful that speaks volumes about their opinion of him.
Don't Wait Up was the horse that beat him that day, and I don't think he did a ton for the form in his next start.
To be fair, if you go back and watch that race, Command Performance is the only horse that made up any ground, and he blew the start, and he had to wait rounding the far turn. It's much more of I'm not really concerned about who has done or hasn't done anything out of the race. I'm more interested.
I take it back. He hasn't run back yet. I was having a synaptic misfire, and he's actually worked fast twice since Don't Wait Up. So never mind.
This is the kind of tape that I think it's much more of a visual piece than when you just look at the running line and you go, oh, he had pace to run into and he only finished second with a 75. I think there's a lot more there than that.
Yeah, it's way better than that. I mean, this was a horse I was expecting to come back and be a short-priced single.
Yes.
In a maiden race going long, and just key the whole pick 6 around the horse kind of thing. This throws a monkey wrench into those works, but I think the horse is includable. In the end, I blinked and I didn't pick Wit, and I didn't pick and I didn't pick Command Performance. I decided to go with Jack Christopher. I just thought that debut, very impressive. The time was very good. 2 have come back to win. And then 2 others have run and hit the board, have improved. The figures have improved for the runners coming out of that race. The horses worked forwardly since, in the right hands to take a move forward. And the 92 buyer already puts him right there. I decided to keep it simple. And then Whit, we'll see what happens. I mean, if he can break and run the way he's run, I mean, the horse he's an immense talent, and I'm not going to be getting beat by him in any picks. So
I thought his hopeful was really strong, given that and to your point, I mean, he's got a penchant for getting out slow. That's a problem that needs to be rectified sooner than later. But for him to make the middle move that he did into a hot pace and still at least have a little something down the lane, some try, I thought that spoke volumes about what kind of mind he's got. My question for you with Jack Christopher, I look at the fig, I watch the tape. I mean, is he a sprinter? I know he galloped out really well, but I watched him and it looked like he was running with his hair on fire. And those are always the ones that give me a little cause for pause, wondering, do you have the ability to ratchet it back a hair, going an extra quarter mile? Because these other horses, I don't think many of them have distance problems. I'm a little curious. I look at that pedigree and I look at the way that he ran. That was the only thing that held me back from really falling in love with him, because, like you said, the fig is there. He looked good, but he just kind of gave me that impression of, boy, he's going for broke the minute the gates break.
Yeah, it's interesting. Munnings has better numbers than people. His average winning distance is low, 6 and change probably. But if you just look at the percentage of Munnings in turf routes, they're really good. And then you've got this Dam, who was a sprinter. But if you look into the siblings, you've got some horses that did better, that did all right anyway, going long. Ran some decent figures going. Let's see here. I'm just looking at the siblings now. Don't Rush, one of the siblings, did run like the best figure or tied for best figure going longer. It's an open question, but given the hands that he's in, sure. I was going to trust that he'd be able to get this. He'd be able to get this mile, and the 1-turn mile can be very testing. There's a debate about that. Some people think 1 turn. Oh, it's less stamina. I think it's more stamina when you don't get to run around the turn. So he will be tested, but I think he's got enough. He showed enough brilliance that I'm willing to roll the dice. But if he doesn't win, that's probably why. They are going to the gate at Belmont. So let's put a pin in our win and you're in look forwards. We'll come back to the 3 Santa Anita races after race number 7. I think we're still going to have time to get everything in. We do have a 10-minute pre-record to get in here, so we may end up chatting a little bit quicker about those Saturday races, but they will also be covered elsewhere on the network, so I'm less concerned about them. I really wanted to give these awesome Friday races their due. I thought this was a 2-horse race on paper. The market seems to agree. Let's start there. Is this essentially a match race between Starfront and More Moonshine, or do we think? I mean, actually, Glass Ceiling for Charlie Baker down on the rail, taking some serious money in this spot. But the by my reckoning, I liked More Moonshine a little bit more just based on 3-1 versus 3-5. But I was certainly going to have some 2-7s, plenty of 2-7s to back it up as well. Is it more complicated than that?
I went with the 6 before you.
Nice.
The horse is definitely one that, from a fig standpoint, isn't good enough to win. But I think from a tactical standpoint, there's one way to go. You got to just send and try to clear off. I used this one in the contest, which it has not been a great day for me. I only smoked out the most obvious horse in the entire card, I think. But I just thought, and she didn't change leads last time. It's a little bit of a concern, but I think she's got proper gas in here. And I do wonder if this is nothing more than a means to an end for a horse like Starfront. And while More Moonshine has run fast, we have one good one and one dud. And I know the dud came going 2 turns. I just kind of want to see what we've got one way or the other. I don't need to settle at 5-2 or something like that.
I decided to ignore the last race in the slop going long, ran a good pace figure to the 6 furlongs. So I was thinking just should be suited to a T by this cutback. My fear, I hope you're right about the 6 firing. I think that could really help the 7, because if Starfront is left alone out there, I mean, it's probably all she wrote. We'll see what happens as they get ready to pop from the gate here at Belmont for this 7th race. And it looks like there is going to be plenty of company on the lead. Starfront is out there. Is that and there's your 6. And it looks like your 6 before you is going to wrest the advantage. I can't tell if Starfront is chasing or comfortable sitting down there, but I don't absolutely love where Starfront is down inside in front of horses. You look like you're firing. Meanwhile, More Moonshine a little bit further back than probably ideal in this spot, but looks to be traveling okay. 22.57 for that first quarter. But now Starfront's got herself in a pretty good spot. What do you think is going to happen from here? You got to be happy with where you are.
Yeah, and look, the Baker horse is running really well too, riding up right into the pocket right now. If this comes down to a class test, Starfront should win. But I like everything that Johnny did on this horse, on this filly before you. I don't know if she's good enough to hold this one off, but he gave her every opportunity to win, put it that way.
Yeah, and this one isn't done. Glass Ceiling, who really traveled up in there with the double handful and looks like maybe going to run them all down. More Moonshine never fired. Yeah, Glass Ceiling going to be an impressive winner. This was a good example. We don't really have in-race betting in the U.S., but Dylan Davis, the way his hands were going around the turn when he started to make a move, you just knew a big run was coming. I didn't know it was going to be that big, but big stuff from Glass Ceiling. I was hideously wrong about that when it happens, but good on the folks that ended up with Glass Ceiling. And I would think at a contest, a lot of people might have just said, to the prices that both the 2 and the 7 were going to be. And when it comes to looking for other options, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of 1s and a lot of people moving up on our leaderboard, both for our playoffs. Maybe in our playoff format with the 90 entries going forward and 40 advancing, maybe some people said, what the heck, I'm just going to take Starfront. They're going to be fairly disappointed with that. Though I guess they still will get a few points, but a very nice hit for those who backed Glass Ceiling, who broke right through the Glass Ceiling there in the 7th at Belmont.
Oh, we'll wait and see what the figs look like. I mean, this filly is remarkably consistent. She runs high 70 buyer speed figures. There's nothing to me that would overtly suggest that she ran much, much faster today. I think it's just, again, that cautionary tale of, Starfront had the big fig, but it came in a paceless race. She's been gone since October for nearly a calendar year. There's always, just always tread lightly with those types, because they could be superstars, and she still might be. But she also may need a race off the bench just to kind of shake the rust off some. I don't think it was a disaster, but I would be stunned if she ran anything close to the way that she did in that career debut from a fig standpoint.
I think I got suckered in just to red board it for a second for myself on the projected pace scenario. I wasn't smart enough. And you go and you look at Before You, and of course Before You was going to go to the lead. And I just, I'm looking at a ton of stuff today, and I followed the pace projector a little bit too blindly there. But yeah, it makes sense that Before You was going to be able to be out in front when you factor everything into the hopper. It sets up beautifully for Glass Ceiling, who was maybe going to win regardless with that big run. And it will be curious to see very curious to see what this pace figure the speed figure comes back. And you're probably right, is probably in line with what Glass Ceiling usually runs. That's usually the way it works. Maybe Glass Ceiling took a little bit of a step up there, but probably nothing too dramatic. All right, let's go back and talk about these Saturday win and you're in races from our friends at Santa Anita. The next one we're going to talk about is race number 8 on Saturday, the Santa Anita Sprint. Very curious to hear who your range of contenders is in this one.
I have Dr. Scheibel at 4-1, Vertical Threat at 6-1, CZ Rocket at 3-1, Flagstaff at 7-2, and Collusion Illusion at 6-1. To be honest, this field I don't think is very good. CZ Rocket makes sense. Flagstaff makes some sense. Flagstaff, I hated how early he was to change leads in that most recent start. That to me is more alarming than a late lead change. And I'm not convinced that this sort of distance is really his best. I think he's good 7/8 to 1-turn miler. Dr. Scheibel, I don't have anything to really say bad about him other than I don't think he's overly fast. I just don't think he's got an edge on this field. Vertical Threat, I think he may be a paper tiger. I've fallen for this trap one too many times. He could win. Maybe he will. If he's 9 or 10 to 1, I'll entertain betting him, but I don't know that he'll be in this spot. And that basically leads me to Collusion Illusion. Collusion Illusion, when you look at the way the workouts were spaced, he basically went into that green flash, which was his first start on turf, after a pretty significant gap in the workout tab. I'm not going to hold that race against him. He comes back here and they put blinkers on him. He's got a 47-2 bullet out of the gate in his most recent workout. And on his best day, I think he is every bit as good as any of these horses. And he may slip through the cracks a little bit. This would probably be, if I needed to make a pick in this race, I'd probably go on to Collusion Illusion just because I don't like anybody else. And I still think there's a chance that this is actually the best horse in the race.
That's who I picked too. I was hoping, I handicapped before morning lines. I was hoping we'd see maybe a little bit more than 4-1. I mean, I think your line is better in terms of what I think the value is. But, first start on dirt at 4, second off the long layoff. Last figure showing is a 98. It's a good draw. Certainly concern over where he's been. Concern that Pratt worked him and Dr. Scheibel and chose Dr. Scheibel. But see, I think those things are why it ain't going to be 4-1. It's going to be 8-1. And then the potential bug becomes a feature when you're talking about potentially getting twice the odds. I think Collusion Illusion is going to lay closer with the blinks, get a good trip. I like the horse. Scheibel makes all the sense in the world, and it could set up really nice for him if they decide to send Collusion Illusion in this spot. I like the fact that Scheibel's won with a variety of running styles. I like the third off the bench. And then I guess my question with Vertical Threat is what price is this horse going to be? Because if you cherry pick his best pace figures and best form, he could be a valid threat on the front end in this spot. I don't really see it, but this is a horse I want to keep on side. What number potentially? What number did you hang on him?
I made him 6.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, I don't know if I haven't seen a morning line for this race. I liked him in the Bing Crosby. And yeah, that was a difficult position to be in first off the bench. There was some other speed in there. But for him to pack it in the way that he did in a race that I just personally don't like in general, that left a bad taste in my mouth. I'm not doing anything with the Charlestown race because it's just such an anomaly, a 2-turn 7/8 compared to this race. And the other times that he's been tested, I mean, I just flat out, I've been fooled by him. So maybe he'll pop here finally, put it all together. There's a part of me that wonders if he's one of those horses that as the waters get deeper, he just can't quite hack it. I don't know. We'll find out on Saturday.
Flagstaff, I thought it was too sharp. And then CZ Rocket, I was just thinking wasn't going to get a setup. So I was going to lean against those two bigger names in here, figuring they're both going to catch tons of money. And I like them both obviously as horses, but I just didn't think either had the best setup. You asked about the morning line on Vertical Thread, same as your value line, 6-1. We'll see how it all plays out in the Santa Anita Sprint Championship. Let's talk about race number 9, the Rodeo Drive, Grade 1, going 10 furlongs on the turf for these fillies and mares. Winning you're in action for the filly and mare turf. And I was going to be very consistent with my usual biases in this spot and look for turf form shipping west, though the one that I put on top, Luck, already has a race on the circuit. I was just super impressed by the Del Mar run from Luck. Didn't break, actually broke and then checked, but then didn't have a pace to close into, and it didn't matter. Just ended up quickening like a good thing. And this is a horse that's just based on the known form and the pedigree is supposed to be significantly better going longer and probably doesn't need to be that far back. I thought Luck was very interesting, and Magic Attitude was the other I wanted to have somewhere in the mix. Coming out of the Grade 1 in New York, beating 4 3/4 there, but it's a different ball game out here on the West Coast. And she's had some trips and she's had some excuses, but on her best form, I think she's shown that she's pretty darn good. I mean, you go back and all the way to her 3-year-old year and, beating 3 lengths in the French Oaks and some good stuff over on this side of the pond as well. I don't think the distance is a problem. Those were the 2 I was interested in. I want to try to take 7 and 8 against the field and see if we could make some noise. I see the going to Vegas case. I do. I could definitely see maybe having some savers for with 7-8. She's done well going 10. She could be controlling speed, but I was more interested, and I think we're going to get better prices on the 7 and the 8. How did you see this one?
Those are the only 3 horses that fell into my sort of contender category, and that's mainly because I think this is a rather competitive race, and I don't love any one specific horse in here. I made Going to Vegas 6-1. I made Magic Attitude 9-2, and Luck 6-1. Magic Attitude is actually the shortest price that I've got at 9-2, which is, again, kind of speaks volumes about what I think of the race. I had a hard time really getting stuck into anyone in particular. But to your point, I keep going back to that Belmont Oaks that she won when she came over here for her first U.S. start. And I thought it was just such a good performance. And her Sheep's Head Bay, I thought, was really, really strong at the beginning of this year. And then the New York, I don't want to hold against her because of the ground. The Diana, in all likelihood, just against much better horses. I mean, I hate to say it like this because she has lost a number of races, but isn't she supposed to win a race like this?
I mean, I see it that way. It just depends on what kind of a freak Luck is. I mean, if Luck builds off that last race, and that last race was really, really good. Now, this is interesting. On the morning line, Luck is as low as 3-1. Not a lot of juice in that price. And it's probably an accurate guess because I do think there's going to be people looking for a stranger, and the flashy stranger is Luck. So at the morning line has Magic Attitude 5-1. At those prices, I'd flip the order of my picks. But again, my main interest is to try to take those 2 against the field in this spot. Any other thoughts for you on the Rodeo Drive?
No, I just think it's a very, very competitive race, and I would not talk anybody off of any of these other horses who could go off in that 15-20 to run range, just simply because I don't see anyone in here that I think is an absolute standout.
I feel like we've got some old friends of yours in here. You know, the horses we talked about, Neige Blanche and Red Lark. I think you've won with both of those on shows we've done in the past. So we'll see how it all plays out in the Rodeo Drive, which brings us to Grade 1 action in the Awesome again, going 9 furlongs, 8:10 the scheduled post time for this one. The return to the races of Medina Spirit. Let's just start with this one. Are you with him or against him?
He's one of 3 that I pegged as a contender. I'm not way against him, but he's a price, or I think a price that will end up being considerably shorter than what I would deem fair. I made him 4-1. I thought his shared belief was very much a Medina Spirit kind of race, where I never thought he looked like a superstar, but he just kept finding. And that's very much how I felt about all of his races to this point. He never looks like he's done anything visually fantastic, but he just keeps going. He doesn't want to let anyone by. I think he fits in here. I don't think he deserves to be a favorite when I think he probably will be. Again, I haven't seen a morning line for this race, but it wouldn't stun me if they had him favored. I think he makes sense, but I don't think he's going to be a playable price. Put it that way.
5-2 on the morning line, and he is the favorite over Tripoli at 3-1, Tis a Magician and Express Train at 4-1, Idol at 5-1. I mean, the market suggests that this is a deep and competitive race. Who were the others you had on your short list?
I have Tripoli at 3-1. To me, he is the most likely winner of this race. I think, in all likelihood, in my opinion, those two should be flipped, Tripoli and Medina Spirit, from a betting standpoint and an odds standpoint. And then I'm interested to hear that that's the price that they've put on Idol, because I've never loved this horse, but going back and watching that Santa Anita handicap, I forgot how wide he was throughout. He carried an immense amount of ground, and he basically rolled over all of these horses. I say all of them, with the exception of Medina Spirit and Tripoli. And then he did the same thing to Maxfield, who ended up turning out to be, a pretty darn good racehorse. I made Idol 4-1 as well. I'm a little dubious about the length of time that he's been gone. It's a lot to ask first off the bench, but look, if he runs well, if he runs back to that big cap, who knows? Maybe you get a forward move in his next start. And it's not like the Baltus Barn isn't one that can't win off of a lengthy layoff. I think he'll be ready to go on Saturday.
I've got two against the field here again. I'll start with the one I had listed second, because that's Idol, just because we're there. He's beaten the horse that I actually ended up putting on top on the form book. And it was just such a good race when last seen. Yes, it was ages ago, but this horse is only 4. So there's also a chance this horse has developed from that last run. And if he has, he's going to take a bunch of beating. And I think it's going to be a price. I just almost has to be, with everything else going on in here. That 5-1, for me, that would be acceptable. I went with Express Train on top. And I know it was just a non-effort in the Pack Classic, but watching it back, I was willing to be a little bit more forgiving for the fact that the horse was just never in position. And then keying off the San Diego, I think that run would put him right there. I was going to be a little generous and say maybe that last fast 5 furlong work is an indicator of readiness to get back to the good form. And I was expecting another horse. I was sort of hoping we'd be looking more at 5 or 6 than the 4 of the morning line. But I wanted to be, I feel like you're supposed to be against Medina Spirit in this spot. I have nothing against Tripoli. I'm just not exactly sure how good he is. And I think this is a tougher group than what he's been facing. And I was just willing to take a little bit of a shot against at the prices. So that's how I ended up looking at this race to come 3-8 or 8-3. And that's how I'm going to play it.
What did you make of Tis a Magician? Because I had a really difficult time. I still struggle with that fig in the Pacific Classic in general. The idea that in his 19th lifetime start, he ran the best of his life. Granted, if he's ever going to do it, it's going to be out there dictating things on the front end. And he is a 4-year-old. Maybe he's just finally kind of flourished. But if you believe that fig, and from a running style standpoint, he at least stands a puncher's chance in here, I think. But and I think that's part of at least the reason I think Tripoli is the most likely winner. But I do understand your point of, are you actually that good, or have you been taking on slightly inferior? Because, we've seen Tis a Magician exposed at this level in the past.
Yeah, well, as far as Tis a Magician goes, I think it's a tough situation for a horse that's done the best running on or near with 5 or 6 horses who are just faster than him early. So I think it's just going to be a very difficult situation. You are getting Pratt in the irons. I'm not going to argue with anybody who wants to say, oh, Pratt will figure it out. But if this horse goes up into the vanguard, I just don't think he's going to be able to finish. And just to get back to Tripoli for a second, I do think it's tougher company. And I think this horse has had the horse has had great trips against weaker competition. So, again, not a horse like, if I were going like super deep in picks and had strong opinions elsewhere, I'd be having on backup lines. I'm not like looking to stand in the way of this horse like for my entire wagering day. But I just thought when I'm cherry picking this race and trying to find where I think the value is, I feel much better about the 3 and the 8 than any of the other numbers in here.
Do you, regardless of whether you're sort of pro or con, do you think Medina Spirit fits against this group, or do you think he still needs to find?
It's the right spot, but I think he's got to do better. He just visually didn't do much for me the last day. I thought that was an ugly looking race. And it was just one of those races that I said to myself after the race, like almost, I am, as I described myself before, as a figure monkey. But I said to myself, like, I almost don't care what this figure is. Like, this is a race I want to bet against. I want to bet against the horses coming out of it. And I'm just going to pin my colors to that mast and say, we got 12 minutes to race 8 at Belmont. We've got about a 10-minute pre-tape. I think we can get everything in here, AJ, if we roll this interview with Mark Cramer right about now. The show, very pleased to be joined by a legendary handicapping author and horse player and cyclist and just author in general. Got a bunch of stuff we want to speak to about with Mark Cramer, coming to us from Paris. How are things?
Just great, and happy to be with you.
We got a lot to talk about. Let's start with the reissue of Please Hold All Tickets, which I know you're excited about. We're going to have you on for an audio podcast soon to talk all about it, but I just wanted to give you a chance to explain the basic premise of the book and let folks know where they can buy it, because we got a lot of readers out here in the audience.
Well, the basic premise is that these are the glorious 1980s and early 90s, and perhaps there are ideas about how we can restore some of that in the book in between the lines. That's not the story, but you can glean from the lines. There's also a question of dealing with racing in a humorous way. And I'm trying to get my publisher to say money back guarantee if it doesn't make you laugh. So far, he's not with me, but I think I'll convince him. The story has it's a novel, but these are real horse players and they're real races. And some of you will remember those races, but even if you don't, you'll all remember Sunday Silence. But even if you don't, you're in for some pretty exciting chapters. And most important, it's a road novel crossing the United States, going to all these racetracks along the way with a Don Quixote trying to make it as a professional horse player with his Sancho Panza. But I can tell you, with so many different horse players in the book, you will find yourself in there somewhere.
It sounds fantastic. It sounds like it should be a film. Did you explore selling the film rights for this?
Hey, if you want to be my agent.
I've got 26 jobs already. Let's make it 27. Mark, I love it. It really sounds great. I have the review copy. I haven't had a chance to dive in yet with everything going on, but I will read it before we have you on the In the Money Players podcast, and we'll do a much fuller length exploration like we did with your other recent book that we talked about, which was in the realm of cycling. That brings us to our next topic, actually. It's not cycling per se, but we did talk extensively during your visit on the show about the charitable endeavor you put together that has inspired another member of the In the Money team to do something in a similar vein, talking about Bill Duncliffe and the money he's been raising. And he's already raised a ton of it for the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. Tell me about your association with Bill Duncliffe. And I do believe he's pretty much giving you sole credit for inspiring him on this one.
Well, Bill is doing the Boston Marathon walking, and it'll probably go pretty fast. He's getting in shape for it. And I think besides the fact that we're defending the thoroughbred horses who give us enjoyment for our whole life, we're defending their right to have a good retirement. That's something that's not only animals, it's our human dignity to do so. So this is something that we did a 1,000-kilometer bike ride in the name of thoroughbred retirement here in France. My buddy Alan Kennedy and myself. Alan's been a horse owner himself. He knows he loves horses. So I think Bill deserves all the support you can get. But besides that, some of you may be inspired to do your own walking and hiking. I wrote a book called Urban Everesting about hiking in cities or in around cities. And what Bill is doing fits the philosophy, because this will make you well. And walking, hiking, any type of physical activity can be inspiring for our own human species and not only for the horses. So I'm going to be following this, really excited to see how Bill does.
We've got Bill scheduled to be on an upcoming podcast. He's going to talk all about it. In the meantime, the easiest way, if you want to give and support this cause, to support Thoroughbred Aftercare, which is, of course, the reason we're here with these Horseplayer Happy Hours, and a cause that has been near and dear to Mark for a long time, just go to our link and give through trfinc.org/players and mention, support for Bill or Bill Duncliffe. Put his name in there. He does have his own page over there, too, trfinc.org, and then it's Walk for the Horses Bill Duncliffe with hyphens in between, but that's going to be harder to find. So go ahead and just go to trfinc.org/players if you want to give and support this fantastic cause. And of course, that's for the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. You can also give directly to the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, the TAA. But let's pivot towards our next topic, Mark. We've got you here live from Paris. And of course, the big race. There's many big races in Paris this weekend, but none bigger than the Prix d'Arc de Triomphe, while nobody's idea of a prep race over in Europe has proved a key trial, you could say, for the Breeders' Cup Turf over the years. Really want to get your thoughts on it. But I did find the TAA website is just thoroughbredaftercare.org. There's a donate button right on the screen. Feel free to give to them directly as well. But Mark, let's pivot to Sunday's action, Sunday morning, and this year's ARC. Who do you think is going to win the big race?
Okay, well, first of all, as far as doing long walks for Thoroughbred Retirement, I'm wearing this specially for this because
Nice.
I'm going to propose that you and me, we do the New York Long Path, starting at Washington Bridge and going almost all the way to Saratoga next summer, okay?
I'm all ears, man. I'm all ears. I mean, that's a lot of miles, but I love it, and I attempt to be a fitness person from time to time. So let's talk, especially if it's going to bring you to New York.
Yeah, I'll do it. Now, as far as you mentioned the prepping for the Breeders' Cup Turf, they're one of the co-favorites in this race, Tarnawa, 9 wins in 15 races. Seems to me that the ARC is more like a prep for the Breeders' Cup Turf. Has had only 2 races since a long layoff, won last year's BC Turf, and I'm not sure that this horse is ready, even though the odds are very low, probably second favorite. Okay, so I'm going to try to bet against Tarnawa. Hurricane Lane is another possible bet against horse because no horse that ever won the Chandelier has ever won the Arc de Triomphe. So I've got 3 horses that I'm interested in. Now, Adayar, from a hot stable, Appleby stable, winner of Epsom and King George. That's a big double. And this horse is supplemented, and gotta believe that he deserves to be the favorite. And so if you get second favorite status, if somehow Tarnawa is bet instead of Adayar, then Adayar deserves a little support. But the 2 horses I'm most interested in are Snowfall and Chronogenesis, the Japanese horse. Now, Snowfall won the Epsom Oaks a day after or day before the Adayar won the Epsom Derby, and in a slower time. So I wondered, since Snowfall is a 3-year-old filly, these are the most likely winners in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, 3-year-old fillies. I checked to see what's the difference between the Epsom Derby and the Epsom Oaks. And in fact, even though the tracks were listed as the same condition, the Epsom Oaks was run way wide. They were all racing on the outside. So there must have been some problem with the track that day. So in fact, Snowfall actually raced a longer distance than did Adayar, 1 day apart. So, and Snowfall is also supplemented. Aidan O'Brien's stable is really hot, got Ryan Moore, 3 wins at the distance. So this is the horse that he'll be bet. Maybe 4th favorite or possibly 3rd favorite, but this is one that you might get a little value on. And finally, a horse that should be included, I think, in the in exotics is Chronogenesis, Japanese horse, sired by Bago, was a winner of the Arc de Triomphe, beaten only by a neck in the Shima Classic in Dubai. But if you look at that race, you can see that race on YouTube, and just lost to Mish Riff, the Gosden horse, who would be probably a co-favorite if he were racing in the Arc. He's not racing; he's going for the classic races 2 weeks later in England. So, if you look at the stretch of Chronogenesis was bullied throughout that stretch drive. Nowhere, he couldn't really have space to advance, but advanced anyway. Beat the horse that was bullying her, and just lost by a neck to Mish Riff. Now, Mish Riff has run well against most of these horses, but the fact that Chronogenesis was in the same photo as Mish Riff places Chronogenesis as a chance to break the incredible jinx against the Japanese horses in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe. So, as a natural fan of underdogs, you might get a good value on Chronogenesis. These are the two horses that I'm most interested in, Snowfall and Chronogenesis.
Mark Cramer looking for a little bit of girl power in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe on Sunday. Mark, we're going to have you back soon for a much longer visit, but want to thank you so much for popping by today.
Great. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
One of the good guys for sure. Let's talk about this race real quick. It's post time at Belmont. Matt Bernier, who did you go with?
I assume I'm pronouncing it correctly. Scocciatore, the number 9 horse for Chris Englehart. When you look at the form, the most recent run, that really doesn't bother me or make me excited one way or the other off the turf. But the run 3 starts back, a 1-turn configuration. I know it was against lesser. We're going to be dealing with open N1X as opposed to New York bred N1X here. In that field that he defeated, really not all that great. But I like the way that this one moved, just sidled up, rounding the far turn, and drew off back to the left lead at the very end. But I think this one is at least in with a chance at a very playable price. I made him 6-1. He's 8-1 right now.
I went with number 5, Christopher. I thought might be a little bit better coming from further back. Maybe had to do a little bit of the dirty work last time. I respected the 1 Perfect Money. Surprised to see the even money about this runner. I will have a 1-5 exacta, 5-1 exacta, but I'll back Christopher to win. Perhaps a hunch play with the Sopranos story. I'm actually going to be in theaters starting tomorrow. Many Saints of Newark. I've got my brother getting married this weekend, so I'm actually going to miss it. I hope I don't get all the spoilers from Nick Tamara.
I've got a wedding this weekend as well. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm headed down to Staten Island.
That's so funny. I have another friend. I mean, it's like it's wedding season.
It is.
We can do some shout outs real quick. Tom congratulating David on an excellent regular season. Says, hey, he's gonna do looking for him to do well in the playoffs. Steve-O says hello. Marco says hello. Mike chimes in. Tom Espinoza liked the figure monkey phrase. Somebody in a fairly unpronounceable, I'll just go with SC Zen, has some questions about Tripoli. Maxfield gets a shout. We got to talk. We haven't talked about that one yet. That's back east in the in the Woodward. I think he looks pretty good in there. Tom looking for the rebound from Express Train. Let's see what else we have here. Derek suggests that Mark would be a good guy to kick it with, and that's absolutely true. Again, just one of the good guys. And if he's serious about arranging some sort of walk, now I don't know, that sounds like 100-mile walk he wants to do. Not quite sure where we're going to find the time for that, but if there's a way, 26 miles, I think we can make that work. They're off here in the last race of our contest with Bally Dooley out there. I thought this would be had the potential to set up for a meltdown. I felt like there were a bunch of horses on the outside who had no choice but to go to the lead. I like where your Scocciatore is, though, here, Matt.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, this is very similar to the move that we saw 3 back. I just don't know if he's going to be able to outkick some of these closers from here.
We'll see. You do have a jump on the likes of Christopher and who's this now? Somebody closing down on the outside with a nice looking visual move. And this Bally Dooley, who's been there the whole time, might not get pegged back. The 4 flying late. Feel like it's down to those 2. Looks to me like the 12 is going to just hold. 12-4-9. Good run from Scocciatore. Not quite enough. What price? This horse was a price. So this is going to change things.
18-1. It's definitely going to spice some things up as far as, let's see if I'm just doing a quick run through. There was at least one person who was on the outside of the top 40 cut who will move inside the top 40 because of it. And that's just from the winner's standpoint. I don't know about the runner-up. Because the runner-up
18s.
Yeah, the runner-up was also 5-1. So and there are a number of folks who were just outside the cut line who had the 4. So you would assume that place price will move them up. And then as far as the qualifier from today is concerned, I think many people, this is a brutal beat here. The Joseph Paisi, however you'd like to say that, who was the leader going into it at 119.20. The runner-up, Wayne Tam, had the 12. Wow. But he was already good to go. The third place finisher, Braden Selvig, also had the 12. And I think that's going to be enough to nip Joseph Pacey at the wire.
Oh, that's a tough beat. That's gross. Don't
quote me on that.
Not
but
official.
If my math is correct, I think you're going to be pretty darn close to getting nipped.
Well, we'll see. Here's what we're going to do. This is going to go official. We're going to roll through this really quick. I told our friends at Breeders' Cup social media, we try to give them 5 minutes to be clear. I should have mentioned this earlier in the show. We got cocktails and conversation tonight. So you're going to have a chance to go get a snack and or maybe another adult beverage and then come back for cocktails and conversation on Breeders' Cup social media right here at 6. If you're listening on the pod and want to catch that via replay, they do a great job on that show. You can check it out on the Breeders' Cup YouTube channel. So we're gonna blow right through here. Have you looked at any other races over the weekend you want to give a very quick thought on while we wait for this thing to go official?
I have not, no. I did a very, very brief sort of quick pass through of the Woodward. I think it's a really good field. Max Field, the blinkers on. Yeah, it's definitely an intriguing move for a horse who, I haven't immediately thought of that as the thing holding him back or sort of, preventing him from being number 1 or number 2 as far as the classic division is concerned. The one that I'm probably most interested in seeing is Art Collector. Has he finally put it all together? I think the 2 runs with Mott have been fantastic. He's paired up career buyer tops of 103. I'm very interested to see what we get from him.
That was another one where I wanted to see it with a faster pace and or better horses. But would it be a surprise? Would I have him on any sort of multi-race spreads where I could afford him? Of course. My thought on Maxfield and the blinkers was maybe this isn't so much for tomorrow, not so much for Saturday, but more for the rematch with Nick Sco, and knowing that you can't count on anybody else to do that dirty work, and you got to sharpen them up and try to get them closer. That was my thought, is that they were thinking ahead. Okay, here we go. Here's the playoffs. I'm going to do all 40 names. I just decided. John Twomey, Wendy Long, Trey Crump, Truls Engebretson, Mark Wilgard, PJ Briskenis, Joe Howardcheck, Daniel Edwards, Joe Solito, Peter Savage, Michael Cavana, keep them coming, AJ, Bill Chenvert, Don Marquardt, John Twomey again, PJ Briskenis, CJ Arrigo, Jim Sebus, keep them coming, Andrew Uretsky.
Don't leave us hanging. There it is.
Making me laugh. John Maslin, David Browning, he made it with at least one. Amy Warren, Pete Tressens, Dylan Donnelly, Greg Lewis, Derek Vogt, Gregory Lewis, Joe Solito, Chris Couples, 5 more. The computer's being a little logy, of course, when we need it to be fast. I should have just pulled it up on my own screen. And then our final 5, Paul McClelland, Chris Couples again, Don Marquardt, Derek Vogt, and John Gilpatrick. We'll see you next week. We're going to take that 40. We're going to run it down to 20. But before we're done, let's go over to the other leaderboard and let's give our 2 winners of actual Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats. And we're almost there.
The suspense.
It is amazing.
There
Wayne
it is.
Tam, as predicted, gets there. 164.80 tour de force performance in this 8-race sequence. Braden Selvig gets the other BCBC seat, 137.90. Huge stuff. Unlucky Joseph Paese and Gary Fenton check in third and fourth with very, very respectable scores. I'm going to talk to our friends over there. Maybe we could do it again next week. Matt Bernier, a closing thought.
No, looking forward to the racing this weekend. Good luck to everybody. Chat again soon.
All right, we are out of here. Thanks to our friends at the Breeders' Cup. Thanks to producer AJ. Thanks to everybody for playing, and especially who retweeted and sent things around and made this qualifier such a success. We're hoping we can do that again. To all the listeners, to everybody who's played in one game, we're raising a lot of money for the TAA and the TRF. We appreciate you more than you know. We will be back next week. I'm just going to skip right to the tagline. May you win all your photos.